What were your thoughts on? Did you see the alternate ending that came out?
Yes, where you use both light and dark to resurrect your ghost.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on
being
that?
The planned.
But do you think that would have been what would you thought of that as been an ending? How do you compare that to what we actually got?
I actually do prefer the Cade ending, and the reason being is because that it actually the ending that we actually got.
Right.
The reason I say that is because Cade as a character could have just stuck around, and it wouldn't have had the same effect as a character like Saint 14. It would have been one of these things of, well, you resurrected him, so now I guess you get to use him in marketing again. Cool for Nathan Fillion. I guess he gets another paycheck. And it's just, it could have been done and it could have been made really cheap. But it gave us the closure that we'd been lacking for 5 years that helped to define the rest of the story. And it made the rest of the story that's happened since Forsaken feel valid, right? Our entire journey with Crow was defined by the fact that we needed to get over the fact that he was not Aldrin Sov, and he hadn't been the one that pulled the trigger and killed Cade. And Cade at the end sitting there and saying those words of, no one chooses my fate but me, and then basically saying, this is my choice, I am leaving deliberately, I know I'm going to somewhere better, I know this is what I want to do, and then choosing to part from us, but giving us that incredible gift of reviving our ghost in that moment. That was a brilliant way of ending his story. It was him sitting there and going out on his own terms, knowing that he probably wasn't around here for a very long time, and treating a character with respect. I've seen a lot of people sit there and say that's how you bring a character back, and I completely agree. Like, I think the ending is perfect as well, because it talks about the greater message of the final shape. This is very much like, high in the sky narrative stuff, but the final shape is a meditation on purpose, right? The entire point of the expansion is basically sitting there and saying, I don't believe that someone else should be able to define what your purpose in life is, or your fate should be, right? It's why that line of Guardians make their own fate is something that was referenced a lot in the marketing. It's why Cade says words to that effect just before he chooses to resurrect your ghost and return to the Traveler, And it even goes back to the motive of the Witness and the actual final shape. The Witness is trying to decide the fate of everything forever without involving any choices for any of those beings for the most part. And it's essentially sitting there and trying to remind everybody that you have the agency to choose who you are, what you want to do, and what you want to be. You should be able to define your own purpose in it. Narratively speaking, the final shape has so many points at which it touches on those notes, and it does so in a genuinely beautiful set of ways. The Cade example is just the most common one, but even Zavala, when he's sitting down in his old homestead, speaking to the statue of the calcified version of his wife, it's him sitting there and saying, I know you'll understand when I have to make this choice, right? It's him sitting there and defining something and rejecting a purpose that hasn't been chosen for him, that's clearly made to tempt him. Even when you look at the dissenters, the voices within the Witness, those are individuals that are defying this majority that has become tyrannical to them. And they are saying, no, we should never have had this idea in the first place where we go out and we decide the fate of everything. We completely disagree, and we're trying actively now to depart from this thing. It's seeping in the idea of what is your purpose, choose it for yourself. And they deliver on that constantly. It's a subtle undertone to the whole expansion. It delivers beautifully.
And also Sundance as well, Cade's ghost in that cutscene, she does specifically say, like, Cade's like, well, what if I want to stay here? And she says, if that's the fate that you make. Like, I thought that was one of the best. So well done, because it literally does tie into why the game is called Destiny. It's the whole theme of predetermined fate, destiny, making your own fate, someone else trying to make your fate for you, the Witness trying to impart its impression of what it thinks the perfect universe should be, and then us being like, no, we're going to make our own choice. And also the Traveler being there, sometimes kind of interjecting, giving us ergo sum and pushing back against the final shape. It helps in some ways, but it also generally is just like, these light and dark are these just powers. you do what you want with it. The Witness is going to try and do what it wants, but also Guardians make their own fate. And that line was so well done because it was obviously in the Vault of Glass in when you get the Time's Vengeance buff of Guardians make their own fate. And we saw a lot of Bungie developers saying Guardians make their own fate. It was in a lot of trailers, but the way they had that line off, and then going back to the Cade's ending and the alternate ending, it was so much better because you said the word like cheap, and it would have been quite cheap. I saw some people making the argument of, like the Guardian is so powerful, maybe it should be able to use light and dark to do something, but having Cade make the choice to sacrifice himself
exactly
because the Traveler didn't want to, because the Traveler, even I said it in a video, but like after everything that the Guardian and the Ghost has done for the Traveler, everything over 10 years, the Traveler still was just like, nope, not going to revive you. It couldn't even bend its rule once. It couldn't even, or whether it was able to, whether it wanted to, we don't know, but it still was like, nope, not going to raise your Ghost. So for Cade to be like, I'm going to make a choice and sacrifice myself to give you a Ghost back was so much more cleverly done, and made his presence more meaning because he's a temporary character and he comes and goes. And even little things like, him making Crow the new Hunter Vanguard and giving him the cloak that, wouldn't have been, it's much more meaningful that Cade is gone because he actually gave a parting gift and he gave his blessing to Crow, as opposed to him, if he was just still there in the Pale Heart Tower with his arms crossed, just kind of chilling, it would have been a bit more like, oh yeah, Cade's still there, but it makes the character more significant that he's gone. So yeah, the ending we got was much better. You can see why they changed it, but also it's not like it's not like it was still in the game. Like it was, what we saw was probably a very, very early cut, and it goes to show. And we did also see, and I think Jason's reporting of how they did change the story and missions and do a lot of moving around with Final Shape, and that might have been something they would have done. But yeah, definitely much more happy with the ending they got. And it was just the whole theme of Guardians make their own fate was very, very cleverly done.
I will hold nothing back with regards to admitting genuine. I'm not a Cade fan, so to speak. It's not like I hate the character. It's more just one of the things of like, I sit there and I'm like, oh, okay, it's pretty cool, pretty neat. I'm a warlock at heart. I don't really care too much for hunter stuff when it comes to all of that. But, the way that they framed that entire scene was beautiful. It genuinely brought me to tears because it really did feel like a whole 10 years had come to a climax in that moment. And I can say very few franchises where that's actually been something I've experienced. The last time I think I saw something like that was Mass Effect. And, that was a disappointing end to an otherwise brilliant journey across 3 games that I'd seen. And in the case of the Final Shape, it was the most glorious ending to a journey like that. And, things still continue onward. But I can't contest the fact that it was so brilliantly executed to have that be the choice.
Yeah.
Also, I do love that Sundance effectively was the stand-in voice for the Traveler, because it gave us a way of speaking directly to the quote-unquote God that we've been sort of serving this whole time with the thing of the light and whatnot, but it also kept the Traveler as an entity pretty mysterious. We still have that mixture of, we learned a whole ton about the Traveler and what it is and what's going on with it and what's happened to it now, but we still don't know everything. And I think that was a really delicate line to try and sort of tiptoe through and to really hold the balance on, but they did it. And it's why I think the choice for Sundance to be there was so brilliant too. Even at the very end, where you see Sundance's shell briefly, and it's just brimming with light. Yeah. It's like, what's going on there. This is something larger within that shell. There's something more going on.
But what was up with? Remember that Final Shape trailer where it sounded like the Traveler's voice? Like, whatever happened to that? I didn't see anything. Was that line cut, or was it in the game? Or
no, it's in the game. It's just not in any important context. And
who was
I'll say this: it was Micah 10 as it stands, which is funny too, because it was one of those moments where it sounded like it could be the voice of the Traveler, and in a funny way, It kind of is, because she's a speaker, right?
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
able to interpret the dreams
Yeah.
and visions of the traveler. So
True.
narratively speaking, yeah, sure, it's not the traveler directly sitting there and telling us we are the light of hope. It is, however, someone who is able to interpret the feelings
Closest
and
thing.
emotions of something that's way bigger than any of us. So, yeah,
Right.
next best thing,
Yeah,
I
I was
think, on
thinking
that
about
front.
that.